What if the reason you enjoy being alone has nothing to do with personality? What if it started much earlier, in the way you learned to feel emotionally safe as a child? Because some people don't withdraw from others because they dislike connection. They withdraw because solitude became the one place where they felt calm, understood, and emotionally in control. And once you recognize the hidden patterns behind this, you begin to see your own behavior in a completely different way. In this video, we're going to explore the hidden psychological patterns that often shape people who feel more comfortable alone than emotionally close to others. Not because something is wrong with them, but because certain childhood experiences quietly taught their mind that solitude feels safer than disappointment, pressure, or emotional unpredictability. We'll break down the emotional habits behind hyper-independence, social exhaustion, emotional withdrawal, and why some people feel most at peace when they finally have space away from everyone else. For many people, the feeling of safety around others was never consistent growing up. Some days, affection felt warm and comforting. Other days it felt distant, cold, or emotionally unavailable. And when a child never knows what emotional environment they're walking into, the brain quietly adapts. Instead of relaxing into connection, it starts preparing for unpredictability. Over time, this creates a subtle emotional caution. You may still enjoy people, still care deeply about relationships, but part of you learns to keep emotional distance without fully realizing it. Because when connection feels unstable, solitude begins to feel safer. Alone becomes predictable. Alone becomes emotionally quiet. And for a nervous system that grew up around inconsistency, that quiet can feel like relief. Some childhood experiences leave marks that are difficult to notice because they don't look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it wasn't shouting or conflict that shaped a person most. It was emotional dismissal. You felt hurt, but were told you were too sensitive. You tried to explain yourself, but your feelings were minimized or ignored. And slowly, your mind begins learning an important lesson. Expressing emotions doesn't lead to comfort, it leads to disappointment. So instead of opening up, you start processing everything internally. You stop expecting people to fully understand what you feel. And as that pattern continues into adulthood, being alone can start feeling easier than trying to explain emotions that never seemed welcomed in the first place. Some people appear extremely independent, calm under pressure, and completely self-sufficient. But sometimes, that independence was not freely developed. It was learned too early. As a child, you may have been expected to handle emotions on your own, solve problems alone, or mature faster than you were emotionally ready for. And when support feels inconsistent, the mind adapts by relying only on itself. Over time, needing help can start to feel uncomfortable, even unsafe. Vulnerability feels unfamiliar. Depending on others feels risky. So instead of reaching outward, you learn to carry everything internally. From the outside, this can look like strength. But underneath it, there's often a person who became independent, not because they wanted to be, but because emotionally they felt they had no other choice. But emotional experiences are not the only reason some people prefer solitude. For many individuals, being around others can feel mentally exhausting in a way that's difficult to explain. Constant conversations, social expectations, noise, emotional tension, reading people's moods. It can become overwhelming faster than most realize. And if someone grew up in an environment filled with stress, pressure, or emotional unpredictability, their nervous system may become even more sensitive to stimulation over time. So eventually, solitude stops feeling like isolation. It starts feeling like recovery, a place where the mind can finally slow down, where there's no pressure to perform, no emotional noise to manage, and no need to constantly stay alert. For some people, social interaction is not simply tiring, it's overstimulating. Their mind is constantly processing small details most others barely notice. Tone of voice, facial expressions, tension in the room, shifts in energy, unspoken emotions. And when this happens all day long, the brain rarely gets a chance to fully relax. That's why solitude can feel incredibly calming, not because they dislike people, but because silence removes the constant stream of emotional input. There's no need to analyze reactions, manage impressions, or stay mentally alert. In those quiet moments alone, the nervous system finally gets space to breathe. And after years of feeling emotionally overloaded, that sense of calm can become deeply comforting. Some people also experience emotions more intensely than those around them. From a young age, they become highly aware of emotional shifts, subtle tension, changes in behavior, or the mood of an environment. Even when nothing is said directly, they still feel it. Over time, constantly absorbing emotional information can become mentally draining, especially when no one ever taught them how to process it in a healthy way. So naturally, they begin creating distance to protect their inner balance. Being alone becomes a way to reset emotionally, to think clearly again, to feel grounded after carrying too much stimulation for too long. And as adults, many of these people don't avoid connection entirely. They simply become more selective about who they allow into their emotional space. This is where many people get misunderstood. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness is the feeling of missing connection, but solitude can be something completely different. For some people, it feels peaceful, grounding, emotionally safe. They still value relationships. They still care deeply about others. But they become careful about who they allow close, because experience taught them that not every connection feels healthy or emotionally secure. So instead of constantly seeking attention or validation, they choose connection more intentionally. They protect their energy, their peace, and the emotional stability they worked hard to build. And that's an important distinction. Wanting space does not automatically mean someone is emotionally disconnected. Sometimes it simply means they've learned to value calm over chaos. When you put all of these patterns together, a very different picture begins to appear. Maybe the desire to be alone was never simply about personality. Maybe it was adaptation, a response shaped slowly over time by emotional unpredictability, overstimulation, disappointment, or the need to become independent too early. Because the mind naturally moves toward whatever feels safest. And for some people, solitude became the one environment where they could finally relax without pressure, emotional confusion, or the fear of being misunderstood. That doesn't mean something is wrong with them. In many cases, it means their mind learned how to protect itself the best way it could. But the important thing to understand is this: patterns that protect us emotionally can also quietly shape the way we experience connection. And most people never stop long enough to notice the difference between choosing solitude consciously and automatically retreating into it without realizing why. But every form of emotional protection comes with a trade-off. The same habits that help someone feel safe alone can also make closeness feel difficult over time. When you become used to handling everything internally, opening up starts to feel unnatural. Trust takes longer. Vulnerability feels uncomfortable. And sometimes, without realizing it, people stop giving others the chance to truly know them. Not because they don't want connection, but because distance became familiar, predictable, safe. That's why the real question is not whether solitude is good or bad. The deeper question is whether it's a conscious choice or an automatic emotional reflex. Because there's a big difference between enjoying your own space and feeling emotionally safer, disconnected from everyone around you. There is nothing wrong with needing time alone. For many people, solitude is where they think clearly, recharge emotionally, and finally feel at peace with themselves. But it shouldn't be the only place where safety exists. Everyone deserves relationships that feel calm instead of draining, supportive instead of overwhelming, and emotionally safe instead of unpredictable. And sometimes the first step toward building those connections is simply understanding why the need for distance developed in the first place. Because once you become aware of the pattern, you're no longer trapped inside it. You finally have the ability to choose what comes next.